On Thursday, January 14th, 2021, I spoke with incoming Nevada State Assemblywoman Annie Black, Republican from Mesquite. Why she is someone you should know about is because she's a very active political figure in southern Nevada, namely Clark County. She was recently a Mesquite City Council-member for 2 years. Then she ran in 2019 to become the Nevada Republican Party chairperson. She was unsuccessful in that bid in a three-way race, where current incumbent chairman Michael McDonald kept his chairmanship in that 2019 election race, which I also covered in Winnemucca, Nevada. The party came together. Most notably, Miss Black is in the headlines again because she ran in June 2020 for the Nevada State Assembly, District 19, and defeated three-term incumbent Chris Edwards, who is a notable member of the Republican caucus and recently won an award from the American Conservative Union for his conservative voting record. After winning that seat in November, after beating former Assemblyman Edwards in June, she announced that she would not be joining the Republican Assembly caucus, which is currently led by Assemblywoman Dr. Titus of Lyon and Churchill County, namely of Wellington, Smith Valley. But the big reason why I wanted to talk to her was fairly recently she was in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, and she happened to be in attendance at the President's Save America rally at the Ellipse in Washington, but also because she was witness to the events that occurred at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th between the hours, from her reports, of 11 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., when the Capitol was attacked. She had a front row seat to the event, and she gave me a detailed description of what she saw, experienced, and also some of the backlash she's been getting from her attendance at the event, namely from critics, supporters, and the public at large, stemming from that event here in Nevada. Here is incoming Nevada State Assemblywoman Annie Black from Mesquite, Nevada. There we go. And I'm speaking to
Annie Black from Mesquite, Nevada, Nevada Assemblywoman in District 19.
And Ms. Black, if I may ask, kind of simple starting question. Who are you?
What's that?
Who are you?
Who am I? I'm a Nevada native, born and raised in Las Vegas, mom of two boys, 16 and 18. I'm a realtor and newly elected state assemblywoman. I've served 2 years on the Mesquite City Council. I moved to Mesquite about 5 or 6 years ago. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Yeah. Kind of swinging back to that. Where'd you come from originally?
I was born and raised pretty much in the Summerlin, kind of east of Summerlin area. My parents have a house on Durango and Okie, so I grew up here, went to Bonanza High School, class of 99, and just decided that when my kids were entering middle school that I wanted to raise them in a smaller town environment. So we decided to move up to Mesquite and just maybe a more wholesome small town upbringing for them. So,
yeah. So hence the change from the proverbial big city of Vegas to the heart of the big city to, kind of the distant edge of Vegas.
Yeah, definitely. But I still commute. I commute to Las Vegas 2 to 3 times a week to work. I sell real estate in Las Vegas and basically the whole southern Nevada area. So I'm back and forth quite a bit. So.
Okay. So you graduated from high school in Bonanza, decided to move to Mesquite. What made you decide to go into real estate? Like, why that field of business?
When I graduated high school, I was struggling to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, like I think most people are at that age. And my family has been in the commercial real estate business and real estate development and builders for my whole life. So it was kind of like the family business, but I went into residential real estate. So the summer I graduated high school, my dad said, why don't you go to real estate school and just do that until you figure out what you want to do. And I did that, and 20-something years later, I'm still doing it. It's a great career for me to follow my passion, which is to be involved in conservative politics. And it allows me flexibility and, the freedom to be able to take 4 months off to go up to Carson City or to do what I need to do. So I'm fortunate to have that career, and I've been really blessed in real estate. So.
And I guess I'm kind of glad you mentioned that, since you talked about politics, the touchstone of where we're here a little bit today. Secondarily, what got you to decide to get involved in local life and politics altogether?
I'm not sure where it came from, but at some point in my life when I was, maybe 10 or 11, somebody had given me a commemorative coin from Ronald Reagan's inauguration, and it was January 20th, 1981, which was the day I was born. Mm-hmm. And strangely enough, I got it in my head that when I grew up, I was going to be the president. And for some reason, I don't know, it just kind of became something that I was interested in from that point. And in high school, I worked on campaigns. I worked on, like John Enson's campaign and stuff like that over the years, just helping different people. And it's just always been a passion and almost an obsession of mine. I mean, it's like my kids tease me because everything just revolves around somehow getting back to a political discussion, which I'm sure is annoying for them, but it's just part of who I am and something that I just feel really passionate about.
And talking about, passion and interests, what about the business in terms of ideas and ideology, directed you towards, the conservative side of things and politics in that manner?
Growing up in a entrepreneurial family, I was steered that direction just in seeing how business ran, and my grandfather worked on Barry Goldwater's campaign in Arizona, so I think my family's always been very conservative, and it just was an ideology that I linked and started to see conservatism going hand in hand with entrepreneurialism, which is something that I'm super familiar with and super passionate about. So those ideals just kind of go hand in hand, and it just is, obviously I'm an entrepreneur, and, it's just kind of part of who I am, the fabric of my beliefs and what I've seen my whole life. So that's how I became that way, I suppose.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of flash forward a little bit to present day, because you've been in the words of Theodore Roosevelt, you've been, not only the man in the arena, but you've been the woman in the arena, and you're a city council person. You've been a city council person, and now you're an elected legislator. What sparked that? What made you decide, I want to get into municipal politics here in the locality I live in, which is a real estate real estate and development's a really big thing in your neck of the woods. Why there?
why did I decide to join the city council in Mesquite?
Yep.
Is that okay? When I moved to Mesquite, obviously I, realized that was a community that I had chosen to live there and relocate there, and so I grew up in that community. My parents at one time and my uncles owned casinos there. They built a lot of condos there. We still have several businesses there, so obviously myself and my family are really invested in that community, and I felt like at that time most of the people on the council were older, and there weren't a lot of younger representatives on the council, certainly none that had kids in school or were working age professionals, I guess, and so I felt like that was a void that I could fill, and the opportunity came. There was an open seat, and I jumped on it and ran and, knocked thousands of doors and really got to know the community quickly, and had a successful 2-year term on the city council, really focused on promoting businesses because that's where my passion is, and economic development and fiscal responsibility. And so those were my goals and things that I really strive to work on and make better.
And what would you list as your greatest achievements in your time on the board?
I think my greatest achievement on the city council was never sacrificing what I found to be true to my ideals. There were quite a few votes where I was the lone nay or yay, and you might think as someone talking about politics or armchair quarterbacking politics that if I was in there, I would do this or I would do that. And when you're actually doing the job, it's not necessarily as easy as you might expect to be that one person that's got to go against the grain. But I always held true to what I thought was right and stood behind my beliefs. And that wasn't always comfortable, but I did it. And even if people disagreed with me, they still, I think, respected me for standing up for what I believed. And so I think not caving in and giving in to pressure when things get tough, I held my ground. I think that's my biggest accomplishment on the council.
And then inversely, I'm going to ask this inversely, what would you say is your biggest disappointment in your time on the council?
My biggest disappointment is that I wasn't able to make more traction in the economic development part of my goals, I guess. I had a lot of plans and things that I wanted to do, and it felt like I was the only person looking that direction, looking to really grow our town, and it was an uphill battle, and I feel like I do wish I would have made more ground on that, but I'm still working on it, and I'm excited that maybe I'll have a bigger voice, and I can still use my bully pulpit in the assembly to benefit Mesquite and the whole district, but I haven't given up on economic development, and I'm still very much actively working on that now. So, but yeah.
Which actually leads me to kind of a perfect segue question, because if my memory serves correctly a little bit, before this run to the legislature in this last cycle, you ran for the state chairmanship of the Republican Party, if that serves correct?
That's correct.
And you attempted to, unseat the current incumbent, Michael McDonald, which you found yourself in a three-way race in that situation, and were not successful in that, if my memory serves correctly. Why run for that job precisely? Like, why the chairmanship of the Nevada Republican Party, and what lessons did you learn from that race?
I think that there's not, from my experience, there's not a lot of youth in the Republican Party, and I just felt like I had a lot of energy and a lot of fire to make some changes and to, maybe do a better job. And so I jumped in and tried to run for state chair. It didn't work out. What I will say is the great thing about it is I got to see a lot of the state, travel to all the counties in the state multiple times. Even though I've lived here my whole life, I hadn't been to many of those counties around the state. And I got to meet a lot of people, and I really started to see that there's so many talented people in the party that it's a shame that we are struggling to really get our people elected in this state, because there's so much talent, so many talented Republicans. It just seems like for some reason we can't, we're not organized for some reason. I don't know why that is, but it's just a shame to me. I just was surprised at how many gifted people there were on the state. I guess not surprised, but it was neat to see how many great people there were and how many resources we had. At the same time, we're ineffective at getting people elected in this state. So that was my biggest kind of eye-opener.
And I guess that kind of segues perfectly, because it sounds like you took up the mantle to run for the legislature. And what made you decide to run for the legislature, and not only just run for the legislature, run against an incumbent, Mr. Chris Edwards, in your district? Why the legislature, and why an incumbent? And there we go.
District 19 is one of the more conservative districts in the southern part of the state, and it was my opinion, and it still is my opinion, that Assemblyman Edwards was not as conservative as I thought he should be to represent the people in District 19. You can be maybe less conservative in other districts because it's more of an even kind of purple, but in our district it's pretty solidly red, and I felt like we needed somebody to represent us that was actually really conservative. And Mr. Edwards had voted for budget increases and all kinds of things that I felt like didn't really align with what I thought were conservative values. And so I decided to run against him, and was successful. I think very successful, given that we were taking on an incumbent, which is really hard to do. Obviously what I thought as a constituent was the feeling I felt about Chris Edwards was shared by the constituents, because we won in a landslide.
And I don't have the margin numbers on that, but what was the margin of victory on that race?
It was like 60-30.
60-30. Okay. So that's
or 60-40. I'm sorry.
60-40. Thank you. So not bad turnout, not a bad result.
Yeah.
And so along the way, you did surprise a lot of people in not Northern Nevada altogether about defeating Chris that night in June in the primary. Which, by the way, by doing that, you effectively won the seat because there was no Democratic opposition. Or at least planned opposition, or sizable opposition. So now you're in the legislature. What are your plans?
My plans are to be a fiscal conservative, to work to help pass legislation that supports our businesses, to raise no new taxes. And I've already come out with my BDRs, my 6 BDRs. I've announced them, and they're all along the conservative lines. So we're doing a Spending Restraint Act. I want to make sure that we don't blow the budget out like we have the last 3 sessions. We've had billion-dollar budget increases. So one of my priorities is not doing that anymore. And then I'm talking about creating an anti-appropriations committee called the Cones Act. So it would basically be a committee that would help legislators like myself, who are part-time legislators, make recommendations on things that we could cut, wasteful spending, and programs that can be cut out, because it's a challenge. When you come into the legislature, you say, I want to cut spending, I want to cut waste. Well, what would you cut? And when you're not a full-time legislator and you don't have a staff of people that can look at the budget for you, that's a challenge. And so that would help with that problem. And then obviously, like I said, I want to support our businesses. So I've proposed a Small Business Relief Act, which it doesn't seem like a lot, but I would love to have small businesses be exempt from paying their state business license, just to give them a little boost. And I know that's only $200 a year, but could help. And then Slam and Jam Prevention Act basically says every bill has to be posted online for at least 48 hours before it can be voted on, so that the voters, or the constituents, and the legislators have plenty of time to read it. And then I would love to put teeth into the none of the above, none of these candidates option of the ballot. So if none of these candidates wins, we have a new election with different candidates, because I think sometimes, especially in judicial races, you end up with one candidate and you may not necessarily like that candidate, but there's no one else running. So this just puts teeth in that none of these candidates. And then the final bill that I've submitted is a election protection kind of omnibus. So it's all kinds of election reform, voter ID, no more ballot harvesting, no voting after Election Day, repeal of AB-4, and making sure that we don't continue that on. So I've got 15 different items in that kind of omnibus bill that is my sixth BDR. So those are my priorities for the session.
And I also kind of want to hit on something that's kind of a little more present day, and I kind of do want to swing back to a couple of those items, because those do sound rather interesting altogether in terms of where and what you want to do with them. So, you've won the election, you've got these BDRs in queue, you're getting ready for session. I want to ask from your standpoint regarding, the last election we just went through. What do you thought? How do you thought it was handled, or how do you thought it worked out?
I'm disappointed in our elections in Nevada. I was not in favor of the primary being all done by mail-in ballot. I thought that was a big mistake, which opened the door for what happened in the general, which was AB-4, which allowed a bunch of, same-day voter registration, ballot harvesting, ballots being sent to people even when they hadn't requested an absentee ballot. I thought those were really bad mistakes that we shouldn't have passed, and clearly that probably was a sentiment shared by a lot of people, because AB-4 was passed in the middle of the night and in kind of a shady manner. So I think those things make it easier to have fraud in an election, whether there was or wasn't fraud. I've seen things from my personal experience on working behind the scenes in some lawsuits in the state, but I think it's disappointing, and I know there's talk of making AB-4 permanent, and I sure hope that doesn't happen.
And then kind of concurrent with that, because I know there was this contention, especially in your neck of the woods in Clark County, regarding the end of the election, and or at least the outcome. I guess what I'm going to just go ahead and level and ask is, do you think that the lawsuits were settled appropriately, and do you think that we have an incoming president coming in?
Do I think we have an incoming president coming in? I didn't hear that question.
Yes.
Yes. I think Joe Biden's going to be president. He's going to be inaugurated on January 20th. I mean, I know. I mean, look at a race like Stavros Anthony, for example. The margin of victory there was so small, and we even had Joe Gloria coming in and telling the county commission that he didn't feel confident that he could certify that election, and that he thought we needed to do a redo of that election. That was his recommendation. The county agreed to that, and then decided to change their mind and go ahead and certify the election for the other guy. And so I think, if Joe Gloria is saying irregularities, then we need to look into what happened there. And it's disheartening to see that the county commission would not listen to Joe Gloria and just go ahead and certify an election that he said probably shouldn't be certified. So I think it's things like that cause people to have concern about the election.
So that makes sense, especially in Clark County, since that was one of the most hotly contested races, and one of the closest races of major consequence in Nevada. Which you're right that there was the board eventually, but the Clark County Commission ended up certifying the race over those objections, and currently have Ross Miller to be seated to the board. So that is kind of a valid point to raise. So we get through the election. Everyone's races get certified. We go through this litany of lawsuits throughout the state. Were you? I mean, as an incoming legislator, obviously your involvement and you have a bit of an interest in watching and paying attention to this. Were you kind of plugged into lawsuits, plugged into the county commission? Like, were you involved with any of the atmosphere, any of the events at all beforehand?
I sat in on a meeting or two and was, kind of connected on some of those, like April Becker's and Stavros, and just, kind of hearing what was going on behind the scenes, and listening as they were getting affidavits from people about, going to someone's house and saying, hey, John Smith voted from here. Does John Smith live here? And that person that owns the home saying, nobody named John Smith lives here. Well, where does that person live? And so kind of seeing that part of it, and watching how hard it was and how much resistance they got trying to prove or get evidence that things hadn't maybe all been above board. I mean, it's just a really challenging situation, and then you're also up against the time constraint. So there's a lot of things working against you when you're trying to prove election fraud. And furthermore, just lawsuits didn't go anywhere. It was proven that there was no fraud. I think that we all know just because you can't prove something in court doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It just means that maybe, you just circumstances, and that doesn't mean that definitively there was no fraud. It just means you couldn't prove it in court for whatever reason.
Okay. No, I mean that's I can take that from that standpoint. So kind of swinging a little bit more to present day, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this question, because this is kind of something, or this couple questions, because this is something that has become more prescient in recent months and recent memory. We've had quite a few of these events in Carson City and in Reno. The president's contention of the Stop the Steal rallies and events throughout the country, and in the fact that the president's contention was, hey, I'd like more scrutiny on the results. I feel that the results aren't satisfactory in certain locations like Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and whatnot. What was your take on the whole effort in regards to that?
On the president's effort?
Yes.
I mean, my take is, I think that he did everything that he could do from where he, from a federal level. In our state and other states, you saw, like, going back to AB4, that was passed, and there was nothing here that the president could do about it because that's out of his purview, and we didn't have, we're in the minority, Republicans are in the minority, so Democrats were able to go ahead and pass that, and I think we just kept seeing this same thing, which gave people pause, which is, you go to bed, like, look at April Becker's race. You go to bed, she's up by a wide margin or somewhat wide margin. You wake up the next day and she's down. And that wasn't only in Nevada. That happened in several states. And I think it just lent to an already kind of reservation that people already had about election fraud and stoked that fire a bit. And that had obviously been a conversation. I mean, before the events last Wednesday, I had proposed my 6th BDR, which is that election protection bill, because people had said for many months now that they felt like elections weren't legit. And so I heard that, and that was what caused me to bring that 6th BDR. But that's been a conversation that's been going on for a while. So I think it was a culmination of a lot of events, and, here we are. I think the president did everything that he could do.
And that's kind of like a perfect segue into, like present day and like the last week and a half in American life. So I guess I have been getting your anagrams a bit, and I've kind of been paying attention to that. And I noticed you did go to D.C. to go to the president's speech at the Ellipse. And I kind of just want to ask you just what happened, just so I can understand and so I can clarify as much as I can, because there's a lot to be asked, I guess. So if you don't mind me asking, how was the trip?
It definitely did not go the way that I anticipated, I can tell you that much. Mm-hmm. We decided to go kind of last minute, and, ended up flying out all day Tuesday, spent a whole day pretty much on a plane, arrived in Baltimore, sometime Tuesday evening, drove to D.C., went to bed, because we knew the next, Wednesday was going to be rally activities kind of all day. Excuse me. Thank you. Oh. And got out to the Ellipse around 8 o'clock, hung out there until, I would say, 11. It was a typical Trump rally atmosphere, but we were pretty far from the stage, and the feedback on the sound system was bad, so we decided to go to the Capitol, because we thought we had heard the president was going to speak there at the end of the march. And so we headed over there and hung out from like 11:30 till the whole situation at the Capitol went down at around 2. And it quickly changed. We got there, and there was kind of a family with maybe older teenage children, and we were all listening to the speech on their phone, and everything was fine. And then as people started to come, more people started to show up. There was definitely some different characters there, people in gas masks and helmets and wearing all black, and just didn't seem like the same group that was over at the Ellipse. So it was a little strange, you're on edge, because already you go into that situation hoping that there's no sort of terrorist attack or whatever. I mean, you just kind of, you want to be safe. Right. And so you're already kind of on edge, so you're watching everything, and it obviously escalated, and we all know the rest of the story from there.
Right. That's actually something I definitely want to ask, because you headed there from 11:30. So you try to beat the crowd from the president's speech that concludes around noontime or so, and head to the Capitol, or at least the Capitol grounds. Do you head down Pennsylvania Avenue? Do you take an Uber? How are you heading in that direction?
We kind of zigzagged back to Chinatown because we left the Ellipse and then we stopped at our hotel in Chinatown, and then from Chinatown we went down, oh gosh, I don't know the name of the streets there, but we didn't go down. I mean, we may have walked along it at some point, but we kind of zigzagged up west to go, I think it was west, to go back to our hotel, and then came down on the opposite side of the opposite end of the Capitol from where the march was coming down Pennsylvania Avenue. But yeah, we were there well ahead of that. We listened to the president's speech, the whole speech over there at the Capitol before everyone departed from the Ellipse and marched to the Capitol. And we were on the east side, and when everyone marched up, that was on the west side. So there was a ton more people on the other side of the Capitol that we didn't even realize until we left were over there. So it was interesting, to say the least. I mean, yeah.
So you decided to go to the east side, and just describe to me, if you could describe to me and those listening or reading, what you see, like perspective-wise. If I was standing on that corner, or standing on that point in time, what's the lay of the land?
So we're on the east side of the Capitol, and I think it may have been a fountain at some point, but now it's kind of filled in with dirt. And so we're standing there by this fountain, and there's a tunnel under there where you can come out of the Capitol. I don't know if I'm sure some of your readers know about it, or listeners. And so we're standing in that area between the Capitol and the Supreme Court, and just there trying to keep warm because it was listening to the president's speech on someone's phone, and everything seems fine. And then around, that ends, I guess, at around 1. I'm not sure, but we just are waiting for people to start arriving and seeing what's going to happen next. And as people start coming, I would say, we're 30, 40 feet from the little fence that they've got up. And at some point, shortly before 2 o'clock, someone starts saying, "Storm the barrier," and they're chanting that. Sounded like it was one person, may have been, but it wasn't a whole crowd of people. It was just a small group. And then that kind of died down for a second, and at that same time that they're chanting "Storm the barrier," there's some other people with megaphones in black and a MAGA hat saying, "This is our house. They can't stop us from going in our house," and kind of chanting that. And then it kind of subsided for a minute, and someone says, "They said that we can go up to the bottom of the stairs." So people start walking in. And I don't know if I couldn't tell because I wasn't up there, but it seemed like they just started walking in like they were let in, or they thought they were being let in. And while the chanting is going on earlier, before all this happens, there's people over to our right who can see what's happening at the barrier, and they're chanting to those people at the barrier, trying to make people go through. They're not MAGA, they're not MAGA. So I don't know what they were seeing or what was going on because we couldn't see, but clearly they had this thought that those people didn't look like they were part of our crowd. Mm-hmm. And the family next to us was saying, when part of the railing got pulled out of the fence, they were saying, put that back, this isn't what we do, we're not here for that. And so there was certainly a contingent of people that were like, this isn't what we were here for. And that was me, I agreed. So as people start going through the gates, I went the other direction because there's snipers on the roof, and you just don't know what's going to happen in that situation. I thought for sure people are going to get tear gassed or rubber bullets or whatever. So we go the other direction, and, they get in at the beginning, they get to the bottom of the stairs, and then slowly people just started getting higher and higher up on that middle staircase until they're up to the top, and the same on the left stairs, and then before you know it, the whole Capitol is just, there's people everywhere, and I just remember, thinking it's only a matter of time before someone gets inside, if that's what they want to do, because there was not enough police to stop people. And that was about the time, the riot police started showing up, and that was when we decided to leave, because it seemed like, at that point, it was just best to get out of there.
So you're just like standing, you're standing, were you standing on the Capitol grounds, or were you standing, like, whereabouts were you standing again?
So if you're looking at the Capitol, like that middle staircase, if you're looking at the Capitol with the Supreme Court behind you, when people started going in, I went towards the Supreme Court. There's a big wide walkway kind of between coming out of the Capitol going towards the Supreme Court, and that's where we ended up kind of watching what was happening. And I never went through the barrier, never went in the Capitol, never did any of that. So that's been something that people have suggested that I've done, or I don't think, but I've repeatedly said I never went past the barrier, never went on the Capitol grounds, never went in the Capitol, never participated in any of that. So I've said that repeatedly, but for some reason, I don't know where people are,
That's why
they're
asking.
kind of lumping us all in together. Yeah, no, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying people in general are maybe lumping a lot of us in together.
Well, and that's kind of why I'm glad you're giving me a very, step-by-step description of what happened here, because that was my next natural question of, you said you were at Supreme Court, and then I know there's a street, like, separating, Supreme Court and the Capitol grounds. Did you cross that street, or were you on the Capitol ground, like, in the Capitol ground, or Capitol Park territory at any point in time?
Yeah, so I guess, I don't know, I'm kind of, when you say Capitol grounds, I'm thinking, in my mind, that's anything that was beyond the barrier, right, that was kind of cordoned off. But there obviously is more to the Capitol grounds. There's a long walkway before you get to that street, and that's where we were standing. So I guess technically we were on the Capitol grounds, but not in that part where we weren't supposed to go.
So
that makes sense, like beyond the fence.
So it appears that if there was a barrier or a wall or some type of limitation, you didn't attempt to breach it or cross it or even enter in or anything?
And like I said, that was never, like I've said before, the Capitol and all of these Supreme Court, all the buildings there, to me, as a patriot, are sacred places, and that wasn't something that I felt was the right thing to do. I would never dream of going in there. But secondarily, to anyone who thinks or questions that, you just have to ask yourself, how much sense would it make for me? I'm as a legislator, someone who's worked for over a decade to try to get to earn this right to serve this state in our state legislature. Why would I go and do something that stupid? I know there were legislators that did do that, but to me that's just absolutely, moronic. Why would you do that? It's just, I can't understand it, and I would never do that, so, no.
And forgive me, I want to make sure, just to be clear, because literally the minute you said, when I asked that question, like, you cut out just briefly, was that yes or no? I just want to make sure, just to be clear.
Yes or no that I went in the Capitol?
No, the statement you said beforehand, because I don't know if I got a yes or a no, and I just want to be sure.
I don't remember what the question was. Did I go past the barrier? Is that what you asked?
Yes, bingo.
No, I did not.
Okay.
Absolutely no.
Okay.
No.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, just to be absolutely certain, clear, and to make sure my audio got that precisely. So thank you for letting me let me double back on that.
No, I appreciate your doing it.
That's why I do it. I like getting to the facts. So thank you for being willing to letting me ask that again. So, what time did you decide like it's time to boogie? Like we're good. Like it's time to get the hell out of here.
I think it was probably around 4:15. We waited in line till there were some restrooms there, so we waited in line and kind of did that and hung out away from everything on the grass. Just, I don't know, like in a state of disbelief that this was all happening. It was just a surreal moment, and so yeah, I would say it was probably just before 4:15. We had gotten the notification that the curfew was going to happen. The riot police started showing up, and then we decided, let's get out of here and get back to the hotel, and we hustled back to the hotel as quickly as we could. It was kind of, the whole area was heated at that time, too. It wasn't even just around the Capitol. Close to Chinatown, we were almost back to our hotel. There were some Trump supporters in a crosswalk, and some people started gunning for them, basically, saying, yelling at them and trying to, I don't know if they actually would have hit them, but they were acting like they were going to. And as we got closer to our hotel, we were walking next to a older gentleman who had, Trump stuff on, and another guy going the other direction just hit him, and kept on walking. And it was just, and then we had heard there was pipe bombs. So at one time we're in our hotel and you hear this giant explosion, which we're like, well, was that a flashbang? Because they've been using flashbangs over at the Capitol when people, I guess, breached in the Capitol. We didn't know what was happening, but we heard a couple flashbangs. So we're in our hotel room thinking, oh my gosh, is that a pipe bomb? Is it a flashbang? Like, what's going on? And there's no real, the internet was bad. I don't know if it was, intentionally kind of shut down or if it's just because so many people were trying to get on it. So you're kind of out of the loop as to what's going on, and just sitting in our hotel room waiting to kind of, for everything to die down. And that's just what we did for the rest of the night.
So if I may ask kind of a minutia detail here. So you decided to get out at 4:15. How'd you get back? Did you walk? Like, what was the means of travel to get back to your hotel and the route?
Yeah, we walked, and that was when we ended up seeing what was happening on the other side where the march had ended. I mean, dramatically more people over there on that side, which we had no idea about, than there were on the side that we were on, just because I think that's where the march ended, so that's where the majority of the people ended up. So yeah, we walked back to our hotel, which I think it was, maybe 2/3 of a mile or something like that. So, or maybe a mile, I don't know.
And if you could describe to me, and this is another minutia detail, like, what was the route of travel? So did you did you go west, east, north, south? Like, which way did you go from your posting place at the Supreme Court?
We went. So I don't know. My only gauge of direction was we were on the east side, so obviously the west side was the other way. So we went. We walked between the Supreme Court and the Capitol back towards Chinatown. Not sure what direction that is. And then we went west to so if you're on the east side of the Capitol looking at the steps, we went to the right, and then we went west towards, I guess that's west. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm not acclimated to directions up there, but along the side of the Capitol, to my left, you can see the west side of the Capitol where all the people are, where Pennsylvania Avenue is. So, yeah, we walked towards Pennsylvania Avenue, across Pennsylvania Avenue, all the way west until I want to say we were like on maybe 3rd Street or something like that. Our hotel was on. So we just tried to make a, beeline to our hotel as quickly as we could. I'm not sure the route, but that was the general gist of it.
Okay. So, and that's when you noticed so was this stuff that you saw, the madness of the Capitol, was this on your right or your left exactly?
On the west side, when we ended up seeing that as we were walking back to the hotel, it was to my left.
Okay. Cool.
Sorry, I'm not. I don't.
No,
it's
I understand you're on the road in a different town, so I understand that I can't expect you to know the way to, the red line, the blue line, the green line, or everything. If you haven't been there a lot, so I totally understand. You're fine. That's why
right.
I'm asking in just basic terms, because I'm wanting to understand your standpoint and perspective of where you went. And clarify some points, because like I said, I read the anagrams, read what happened, and I kind of want to understand this a little clearer, so I can kind of understand what you deal with when you get home. Well, actually, namely when you get to the hotel,
right.
And then when you get home. So I'm going to flash forward a little bit. You get to the hotel. Naturally, you hear the event, start hearing about the events and seeing the events. Like, did you in your horseshoe travels back to the hotel? Did you stand post for a sec or a couple minutes just to kind of go, oh my God, or was it just a straight what was it?
Yeah, when we saw the west side of the Capitol, we stood there for a minute in disbelief, because they had, I don't know if it was in preparation for Trump setting up for his inauguration or what was happening, but they were putting up scaffolding, and we were at the inauguration, his first inauguration, and it looked like they were kind of building that same setup where they were going to have chairs up there, and so maybe it looked like that was in construction mode. But anyways, there were people just everywhere. I just had stood there for a minute and kind of chatted with people who were just watching, in a state of disbelief, and kind of asked them, hey, what had gone on over here, because we had no idea what was going on the other side. And, just in awe, really. I can't even, there were so many people in there that it was like, wow, and they were everywhere, inside scaffolding, on top of walls, and you're like thinking, how the heck did they even get up there? Yeah. But just kind of taking it all in, I guess. I hate to say it.
No, I mean, I understand. That's kind of, so not every day you see the setup, you see the U.S. Capitol and the situation it was in. So,
yeah.
You get back to the hotel, you start to piece together what's happening. What's going on in your head? What are you thinking?
Honestly, and it sounds really strange, there's several times during watching that whole situation when we're at the Capitol that I'm, on the verge of tears, just because it's just a building, you think, right? It won't, maybe not, I don't know, maybe goofy, but I just felt extremely emotional, and scared. What's going to happen now? Is this the beginning of some sort of huge thing in our country? And what's going to happen to those people? What's going on with the legislators inside the building? I felt pretty confident that they weren't in there anymore, because I know there's tunnels and things and ways to get out of there. And I'm not saying they were never in danger, but I felt fairly confident that they were hopefully evacuated as soon as possible. So just kind of, I don't know, sad and in shock, really. And you're just kind of I don't know, and scared, right? You hear a bang outside of your hotel and hope that there's not going to be a bomb somewhere, So kind of just, I don't know how to explain it. Scary situation, basically.
No, that's fair. I mean, I can understand. The moment was confusing. It was heavy, and it was not exactly a day at the park, as they would say. Well, that's a good way to say
Yeah.
it. So when do you decide, like, it's time to come home to Nevada? Like, it's time to jump on a plane or you need to come back home?
We had a flight scheduled out of Baltimore for the next day. We had already had, plans to come home. I think our flight left at, I don't know, sometime that afternoon from Baltimore. So the curfew, we didn't know if the curfew was going to get extended, and we didn't have food or anything. There was no restaurant at the hotel, so we're like, maybe we should hurry up and get out of here in case they lock the city down, because the curfew was supposed to have ended at 6 a.m. So I feel like we left D.C., grabbed our car, and got out of there around, 9 or so, somewhere around there, and headed to Baltimore to try to see if we could grab some breakfast and then head to the airport, which is what we did. So we spent pretty much that whole day, driving back to Baltimore, getting to the airport. We had some lunch there, and hopped on a plane and came home.
Okay. And so it's Thursday. You're in transit Thursday day and afternoon, it sounds like?
Yeah, I think we ended up probably getting home to Mesquite, maybe 7, 8 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm. So 7, 8 p.m. And at this time, when you get home to Mesquite, what are you aware of in regards to the events that you have just been privy or witness to in Washington?
Not much. We bought Wi-Fi on the plane so that we could kind of check out the news, but the Wi-Fi was not working. So there were obviously other people like us that had been there in different places. So there was people talking about different things and what they'd seen, but at that point, it wasn't much that we knew more than what we'd seen on the news the night before, and then basically just whatever kind of rumory stuff you hear on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I think at that point we're starting to, maybe we heard, I had known at that point that the gal had been shot and passed away, and that was pretty much all we knew at that point.
And then naturally, that's kind of, I imagine that's when the news hits you a little further and like a little directly. I'm assuming you're getting phone calls now by, your colleagues, political operatives, people to know about, hey, what happened? When does that barrage start hitting you?
I actually did an interview with Kevin Wall Wednesday when we got back to our hotel. Wednesday night. I don't recall the time. Must have been sometime between, maybe it was like 8 o'clock. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But I did an interview with him, and then, obviously family and friends that knew I was there were texting me the whole time, making sure I was safe. And then when I get back, is when things kind of people start calling and asking press-wise.
Right.
And from there, it just kind of got busier and busier throughout the week. Friday was pretty busy, I guess. I did a lot of interviews on that Friday.
And that's kind of when you notice things start, is that kind of when you notice the tenor of things changing in terms of, the response from the public in your neck of the woods and et cetera, et cetera?
That was when I started to realize that there were a lot of people out there, or at least a lot of loud people, that wanted me to be persecuted for going to a protest, even though I did nothing illegal. And that was when that hit me, right? Because I wanted to talk to as many press people as I could to get my story out there. I immediately put out a statement saying that I condemned the people that went inside there and thought they should be punished to the full extent of the law. And then I just kind of realized, I I did nothing wrong. I gave my side of the story. I put out my statement, and I didn't feel like there was any other actions that I had to defend. And so the next kind of piece that I put out was really just saying that, people are calling for my resignation. I'm absolutely not going to resign. I did nothing wrong. And, that was kind of the end of it. I don't feel like I have any other justification or explanation to make.
Can I ask that real quick? Because that's something I kind of wanted to understand the personal element of, because I think it was late Friday. You had the majority. You had the Speaker Frierson and Leader Titus putting out a joint statement, after 6 o'clock in the evening, and I was trying to figure out what that was about. Saying, to the effect, we condemn the events in Washington, and we would not be happy if we had anyone was in attendance at that event, et cetera, et cetera. How did that make you personally feel at that point in time?
It made me feel upset because, first and foremost, neither one of the Speaker or the Assembly Minority Leader ever reached out to me and asked me any questions or wanted to get the story from me. I think they just caved to pressure from people who were calling for me to resign. And instead of coming to me and getting the story, they put out this veiled statement, which was clearly about me, didn't name me, but it's on Democrat letterhead with the Republican minority leader signing on to it. And it seemed like a swipe, a jab. And, I can't say I feel surprised. I chose not to join the Republican Assembly caucus, so I don't know that I've got a lot of friends over there, but I just think that it's disappointing. Differences aside, it's not personal, it's business, and to throw someone in your own party kind of under the bus was, I don't think, very good, and I think I felt betrayed. I felt like she should have my back, even if we don't fundamentally agree on, work things. We hopefully fundamentally agree on my right to go to a protest. So it seemed disappointing.
And then I know you kind of spoke to this a little bit, then concurrently you had more people, the clamoring of people on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, throughout the weekend, basically calling for you to resign. And, how did that make you feel? I mean, and if you had this, if by chance, Carson City is a small town, and the legislature is a small neck of the woods, if by chance you found yourself at the deli standing next to that person, and that person asked you the same question, what would you say to that person, right there and then?
If they asked me to resign?
Yes.
I would say no. I did nothing wrong. I think the problem is that a lot of these people, they didn't, I'm going to say they didn't like me. I'm not saying me personally, but they don't like the idea of Republicans. They didn't like me before I went to D.C., and this was just another validation for them about why I'm an evil, heinous Republican person that shouldn't be holding office. And so, I had a conversation with a gentleman yesterday who was just calling me repeatedly because I have my cell phone number on my website because I like people to be able to contact me.
Oh, dear.
He just kept calling me and calling me and calling me and hanging up.
Oh.
And I finally I answered, and he finally responded, and he started yelling and screaming, "You need to resign, you're a white supremacist and a racist and this and that." And I was, I'm calm with the guy. I know it's not about me. This is just the situation that we're in the country. It's not personal. It's just that this is where we are, unfortunately. And so, I had a conversation with the guy, and it ended up very civil. He said, "You know what, you're probably right. I'm probably just caught up in all of this right now and what's going on." And I said, "Yeah, we all are. I mean, it's not just you. And I said, someday when I'm in Las Vegas, I would love to get together with you and have coffee. And he said, yeah, maybe we'll do that. And I said, great, I would really love to do that. Because I feel like on both sides, we've just dehumanized each other to the point that it's just you're a Republican and you're a Democrat or a conservative and a liberal, but we're people. We're not parties, we're people. And that guy, like a lot of people, and like Republicans, just needed to see that I was a real person just like him, and I wasn't rude, I was respectful, and it worked out. But a lot of times I don't get the opportunity to have those conversations with people. They go on Twitter, they're calling for me to lose my real estate license, which is my livelihood and my ability to provide for my family. They're calling for me to go to prison. They're retweeting me to the FBI saying that I should be investigated, which I fully welcome. If they call me and want to question me, I'm fully going to comply. But it's scary that they would want to take away my ability to feed my family and throw me in prison for going to a peaceful protest. Like, that to me is terrifying.
We're talking about the speech at the lips, not the other part, right?
Well, I mean, in general, even if I'm outside the Capitol and I never crossed the barrier, I never engaged in anything illegal, I still have a right to protest at the Capitol, and I don't think I deserve to go to jail because some people decided to take it to the next level.
That's fair. I mean, and I'm actually kind of glad you elaborate on that, because I was going to ask you kind of something to that effect of, have you been getting phone calls from the general public and whatnot, and what would you say to them? And I think you've kind of covered that a bit. And your situation is a unique situation because you are you're a woman in the arena. You are in public service, and you do, you'll be sworn in to be a member of the legislature in a different locality. Does this moment and this set of events that you've been going through, and the phone calls and seeing what happened at the Capitol, has this event changed you in some way, shape, or form in how you may deal with your colleagues and deal with the public and et cetera?
100%. 100%. I feel like people on both sides have been whipped into this tizzy, whether it's from what we're talking about on social media or what's happening on the media or wherever. People are just so angry and so, I don't know. I mean, I knew that, but yes, it's been an eye-opening experience. And now I feel like I don't expect people on the liberal side or the Democrats to ever vote for me or, politically support me, but I do want them to know that I'm a human being just like they are, and I want to make it my goal to try to mend as many, fences as I can or bridges as I can with as many people as I can, because that's all I can do, right? So I'm going to try to do what I can do, but even if I, talk to 100 people and I can get through to 2 of them, that's something. But I don't expect their support, but I do hope that we can start to have a dialogue, because what we're doing right now and how we're all behaving just doesn't seem to be working.
Along the same lines, kind of swinging back, having a dialogue, you're due to go to Carson City here in about less than 2 weeks here. And, just like the gentleman you dealt with over the phone, you might have colleagues in either of the Republican or Democratic parties in Carson City in both the Senate and Assembly who may have an adverse opinion of you before you even walk in the door, or vice versa. How do you plan on